The INFJ's challenge with sensory overload is inevitable. But what happens when this big picture thinker is faced with too many details? As a judging type, people may assume that the INFJ is extremely detail-oriented, but this is actually far from the truth. So, why is it that the smaller details don't really matter to an INFJ, and should it be considered a bad thing? Welcome, or welcome back, psychos! Before we get into it, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed to our channel, as well as to click the post notification bell so you never miss a video. Number 1. They're naturally focused on the bigger picture. INFJs are already known for being more likely to have their head in the clouds than their feet on the ground. They prefer the world of concepts, ideas, and philosophy, a clear indication of their dominant introverted intuitive function. However, with perfectionism, truth, and accuracy as some of the INFJ's top priorities in life, having a big picture outlook on life can get quite complicated. INFJs are always trying to find the deeper meaning behind the things and are always looking for patterns that they hope will provide some insight into where things are going in the future. It's as if INFJs are constantly thinking about how everything is interconnected on a larger scale, yet they require as many details as possible from their outer experience in order for that larger picture to be as accurate as possible. In fact, this bird's-eye view perception that INFJs rely on in certain situations is ever-changing because, with the right detail, INFJs are more than willing to change their beliefs. Number 2. Details can seem like a nuisance. Besides being directly focused on the bigger picture, INFJs are generally more interested in the deeper, more meaningful side to life. Often wrapped up in their vivid imagination and the beauty in life, sometimes the pesky little details seem irrelevant. Sure, INFJs need certain details when creating their accurate big picture outlook, but when it comes to things like gossip, work drama, and he said, she said scenarios, INFJs can't help but to feel annoyed. Of course, to some people, these topics of conversation are very important, especially when someone is coming to an INFJ for advice. Ironically, if INFJs were given the details, they enjoy observing themselves within social situations, such as things like body language and nonverbal gestures, they would be much more interested. Plus, INFJs like to observe things on their own anyway. Having details explained to them filtered through someone else's perception just isn't accurate enough for the INFJ to truly see the bigger picture. Which brings us to number 3. They want to discover details at their own pace. Well, it's not only at their own pace that INFJs like to leisurely take in details, but also in the way they prefer to observe those details themselves. Like we mentioned, INFJs are big picture thinkers, but they don't just require any type of detail. Of course, when it comes to the INFJ, it's always a bit more complicated, as they require only the relevant details their extroverted feeling and sensing functions naturally look out for. With their extroverted feeling functions subconsciously observing other people's feelings, emotions, gestures, and body language, INFJs see the little things most people would completely overlook. On the other hand, the INFJ's extroverted sensing function helps them to be aware of their surroundings and appreciate the beautiful little details of life by being fully present in the moment. The most ironic aspect of the INFJ's preference to observe their own details is that most of the time they don't even realize they're doing it. Usually, these functions run in the background of their imaginative introverted intuition, their most dominant function. In fact, for the INFJ to be told specific details of a situation rather than observing them on their own, the information gets stored and absorbed in a completely different manner. In other words, it's much more likely for an INFJ to forget information they've been told, especially if they see it as irrelevant to the grander scheme of the situation. Number 4. They aren't black and white thinkers. One of the main reasons INFJs don't like to be informed of details from other people is because of the biased aspect. The INFJ has a very particular and open-minded approach when it comes to the way they judge and come to conclusions. Unless we're talking about door slams or a challenge to their morals, they rarely use a black and white approach when deciphering which action to take and which side they are on. And in these circumstances, details are an INFJ's best friend. It's not that they are always stuck in between the two sides of the coin, or that they're unable to know where they stand, but rather, no matter how strongly they believe in their own viewpoint, they will always understand, or at the very least, question the other angles. And in order to do that, they need details. This is what gives this empathetic personality type the ability to see the good in people, and to sometimes come across like they're playing the devil's advocate. However, in reality, the INFJ is always willing to change their characteristic fluid values and multifaceted opinions should they find a specific detail that they feel is a better source of information, or come across a belief that resonates stronger. Number 5. Too much data is seriously overwhelming. Sensory issues play a role in the INFJ's life in more ways than one, but overloading them with details is one sure way to overwhelm an INFJ. To be a little more specific, most of the INFJ's decision-making is naturally led by their extroverted feeling function, which is most focused on group harmony due to the specific focus on emotional energies. However, when there's too many details at hand, INFJs rely on their introverted thinking function to navigate and come to conclusions. In fact, they're able to combine their introverted intuition and introverted thinking functions in order to understand an idea from every imaginable angle. And although this thought process rarely fails them, if it's used too often, it can lead to serious mental and emotional burnout. INFJs love to learn new things, but they find analyzing data most enjoyable as a low-pressure pastime. After all, the INFJ is much more drawn to the idea of being a philosopher than a knowledge expert in any given topic anyway. So, collecting all the details isn't their goal, but rather finding the why behind larger focus details in order to fully understand them. Number 6. They can get stuck in their head. Now, just because INFJs are considered big-picture thinkers doesn't mean they don't get fixated on certain details every now and then. Like we mentioned, INFJs are unique in the sense that their big-picture ideas are only formulated and adjusted through relevant details. As much as details overwhelm them, there's times when they can't do anything but ruminate about specific elements of a situation because they're stuck at a crossroads in formulating this so-called bigger picture. And so, they can easily get stuck in their heads about things without even realizing they're pulling away from the larger concept. This is even more true when the INFJ feels as if they did something wrong because of their inner perfectionism. For example, if something came out wrong in the midst of a conversation, in order to gain that larger perspective of how that person may view them, they may ruminate about how what they said could have been perceived. They will think of every possible way their words may have been understood by the other person, and then, without truly knowing if they're right, they'll either make the conclusion that what they said doesn't really matter, or that they're doomed. Either way, this thinking process can take days before they reach a conclusion. Number 7. Perfectionism makes details difficult. Speaking of perfectionism, details can either be the INFJ's best friend or their worst enemy when it comes to their creativity and work ethic. In fact, most INFJs are extremely aware of the challenges they face when it comes to details, to the point that some INFJs would consider it a weakness. Luckily, it's not every area of life that the INFJ's perfectionistic and detailed-oriented habits come into play. However, when INFJs are challenged to get something just right, all the INFJ wants is details. This is mostly apparent within career and life circumstances that require them to be detail-oriented. In these instances, INFJs want anything but vagueness, especially if they're solely responsible for the outcome. Because deep down they know they can be rather aloof when it comes to the smaller things, INFJs tend to overcompensate by overchecking their work and spending considerable amounts of time on the insignificant specifics until they get it just right. However, without this detail-oriented alter ego, INFJs wouldn't have the confidence in themselves to take on so much responsibility. Well, psychos, That's it for today's video. So let us know in the comments below if you struggle with details as an INFJ. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video.